Good afternoon, everyone, especially to our participants this afternoon, the LSAs, the newly hired teachers, and of course to our very active reading volunteers. I know you're very much excited to end our day one session for our training for today. But of course, hindi pa huhuli ang ating last component in reading, which is developing learners' reading comprehension. By the way, I am Olive Jane Yuzon de la Cuesta, and I am your speaker for for our last topic for today, which is basics of teaching reading, developing learners' reading comprehension. Now, this time, before we start with our discussion, let's have a game. So it is named Understand Me. All we need to do is to arrange the words to form a correct sentence. So what are we waiting for? Let's start. So we have here unscrambled words. Let's have the first one. So we have words like big, look at the elephant. So let us try to arrange it and let us try to think what should be the correct sentence for this. So let me give you this as an example. So the answer here is look at the big elephant. Okay, so now this time it will be your challenge to answer the remaining sentences. All you need to do is to write the correct sentence, especially those who are in the loop. You can write it down, your sentences in our chat box. And for those who are in the FB Live, of course, you can also write your answers there. Okay, let's challenge ourselves. Let's have number 2. We have the words honey, A makes B sweet. What do you think is the correct answer? That's fantastic. So we have a bee makes sweet honey. Okay, now let's now proceed to the third one. We have the words destinations, roads, lead, often, difficult, to, beautiful. Try to arrange it. That's great. So we have here the correct answer for that is difficult roads often lead to beautiful destinations. That's wonderful. Now this time let's proceed to the fourth one. We have the words beauty, of, full, is, life. Please try to answer it. Don't forget to write your answers on the chat box. Very good. So the answer here is life is full of beauty. Okay, that's really great. Let's now proceed to the fifth one. We have the words journey, not, a, destination, is, a, success. Please try to answer it. I know you can do it. That is fantastic. So the answer here is success is a journey, not a destination. Let's have the sixth one. The words are the soul refreshes, a sweet friendship. Please answer. That would be great. So the answer here for number 6 is a sweet friendship refreshes the soul. Let's have the seventh one. The words are that, I'll, ever, need, all, you, are, is, all, that. I know that's quite long, but I know you can do it. Try to answer that. That's correct. So the answer here is that all that you are is all that I've ever need. Very good. Now let's now proceed to the eighth one. we have the words have, fun, girls, to, just want. You can do it. Very good. So the answer is girls just want to have fun. That's wonderful. Let's now proceed to the ninth one. We have the words learn, to, read, once, you, will, be, forever, you, free. Another long sentence here, but I know you can answer this. That is nice. So the answer here is we have once you learn to read, you will be forever free. That is for the ninth item. Now let's now proceed to the last one. Power is reading. Exactly. This is just so easy, but this is very meaningful. The sentence is reading is power. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating in our game, Understand Me. Now, this time, let us now proceed to the main objectives of our discussion this afternoon. The first is understand the strategies in improving reading comprehension. Second, discuss how each strategy works. And the third, explain the importance of using strategies to develop maximum comprehension of any given text. Let us have comprehension. So, comprehension, again, is the last component in reading. We have reading awareness, word recognition, vocabulary, fluency, and the last one, which is the reading comprehension. When we talk about comprehension, it is the ability to decode printed text and recognize and understand words that you're reading. Now, the process of constructing meaning through the dynamic interaction among first, the reader's existing knowledge, the prior knowledge of the reader. The second one, the information suggested by the text being read. And the last one is the context itself. In reading comprehension, we apply our understanding, and by means of understanding, we develop our physical, mental, and emotional responses. So without comprehension, reading is just merely verbalism. All we need to do is to read without understanding it. So that is why comprehension is very important in terms of reading. Let's now proceed to the next slide. We have 4 categories of basic reading or basic comprehension skills, rather. The first one is the literary thinking operations. Second, the inferential thinking operations. Third, the critical thinking operations. And lastly, the creative thinking operations. Let us try to learn each of these basic comprehension skills. Let's start with the first one. Let's talk about the literal thinking operations. When we say literal thinking operations, it talks about translation, translating text into mental images. That's why when we read, we try to imagine, we try to visualize. And so we try to have our brain movies. We try to picture out what is inside or what is in the text that you're reading. So again, that is under literal thinking operations. Translating text into mental images. For the second one, or for B, we have another one which is all about following sequence. Now, when we talk about following sequence, we talk about the events, ideas, or cause and effect. Examples are we have like first, next, then, after, finally, or lastly. So we try to integrate those words to know the flow or the sequence of a certain event, idea, or even the cause and effect of it. Now, how about the next one? We have the last example for literal thinking operation, which is remembering. So remembering significant details, and that is all about finding the exact word. Now, let us always remember that in this literal thinking operations, we apply first our observations, we remember or find the significant details. So that is all about literal thinking operations. Now, let us move to the next category. The next category, which is the inferential thinking operations. Let's talk about making predictions. Now, making predictions involves using what you know to make a guess about what you don't know or reading between the lines. So readers who make inferences use the clues in the text along with their own experiences to help them figure out what is not directly said, making the text personal and memorable. That is what making predictions mean. Now, we try to ask the question when we make predictions, we say, what do you think will happen next? We try to ask that kind of question. What do you think will happen to the next story? What will happen to the next episode? If you're watching a movie, okay? So now, let's talk about another application for inferential thinking operations, which is reading between the lines. Okay, so reading between the lines, we ask yourself if there is any other meaning than the obvious one in the text you are reading. So in here, the meaning, you're trying to know the meaning without knowing it literally. So it is understanding it explicitly. Okay, so think what images the words create in your mind. So that is how we read between the lines. Let's now proceed to the last application for the inferential thinking operation, which is the recognizing main idea. So in here, we use of graphic organizers. So there are a lot of graphic organizers that we are using. Venn diagram, the pie graph, and everything. So those are examples of the how we recognize the main ideas. Okay, now let's now proceed to the next category, which is the critical thinking operations. So when we talk about the critical thinking operations, we talk about distinguishing fact from non-factual. So we try to differentiate between the fact and opinion. Example, rabbits or mammals. Do you think, is it fact or is it an opinion? Okay, so we try to distinguish the fact and non-factual. So that is all about critical thinking. This is the time to distinguish the fact, details, and evaluating according to criteria. So that is the second one. Okay. The third one actually. The second one is detecting author's bias, one-sided. Okay. The author is writing this kind of story for whom? For what purpose? Okay. And what does the author want to convey to us? So we try to detect the author's bias. We try to detect what the author wants to say to us. Okay, so that is for critical thinking operations. The last one, the one I said earlier, which is evaluating according to criteria. We try to assess the relevance of the story. Okay, according to its criteria. So that is all about the critical thinking operations. Assessing the relevance, the theme of the story. What does the story try to tell us? What does the story want to tell us? Okay, so that is all about critical thinking operations under operations, which is evaluating according to criteria. The next one, or the last actually, the last critical, okay, we have now the last what we call category, which is the creative thinking operations. The first one is inventing flexible alternatives to authors' ideas or characters. So we try to contextualize. Okay, this is very important. So if the story happens in there, how about we try to, try to adopt it, okay, and try to contextualize it in our main perspectives. So flexible alternatives to authors' ideas or characters. We try to have it in our own way. Paano kaya if ganito sa amin? Paano kaya kung ganito sa akin, na-apply ito sa akin? So that is how we contextualize. So let's have another one. For under creative thinking operations, we have applying old ideas to new situations. So we try to adopt what the things we learned, and we will try to adopt the things that we will learn. Okay? Learn things and learn new things. Kaya nga sabi nila, we need to read, and read to explore, okay, and to learn more things. Okay? And last one, for under creative thinking operations, we have translating ideas into an artistic medium. Okay? So do think outside the box technique. So let us think beyond it. So translating the ideas into an artistic medium. Okay? So that is all about creative thinking operations. So that talks about the 4 categories in reading comprehension skills. Now this time I have here more skills in comprehension. The first one, we have identify main ideas, the one I mentioned earlier. The next one, we also have recognize details, develop mental images, make inferences, predict outcomes. Okay, we also have follow directions. Okay, recognize author's organization, and read critically. So those are examples of reading comprehension. So let's learn more about them. Okay, as we go on in preparing for comprehension. Preparing for comprehension, teaching text structures and patterns. So text patterns, this is very common in us, especially those who are teaching in higher levels. We have generalization or the principle, a general statement followed by the supporting ideas or arguments. So we have here an example. Okay, observe the graphic organizer used. So we have fables or stories that teach a lesson. So we have here 3 examples of stories. The first one, we have the ant and the grasshopper. So it gives us a moral lesson. Okay, we have to get ready today for what you might need tomorrow. Okay, so that is the moral lesson that we can get out of reading that kind of fable. The second story, we have the tortoise and the hare. Slow but steady wins the race. So that is the moral lesson that we can get out of the story. The last one, the fox and the crow. So in here, what moral lesson can we get? Or what lesson can we get from the story? So we have here, do not trust someone who flatters you. Okay, so those are examples of generalization or principle. So this kind of organizer or generalization pattern organizer can help you, okay, in preparing our kids in terms of comprehension. Now let us now proceed to the next one, which is the chronological sequence. So a chronological list of events or action, coming from the word chrono means time, logic, that means the order, the sequence. So, all stories are told chronologically. We have here an example. The first box, Jack and Jill ran up the hill to fetch a pail of water. The next thing happened is Jack fell down and broke his crown. And the end of the story, Jill came tumbling after. So as you can see, it is arranged chronologically. So that is another example of preparing for comprehension. Another one, we also have what we call the comparison and the contrast. So comparison and contrast, a comparison of two or more things. Okay? So in here, as you can see in the box, two boxes, the first one on the top, we have apples and oranges. So when we say the word alike, it talks about the comparison, the contrast, it talks about the difference of the two. So alike. So let's talk about apples and oranges. Alike, they're both fruits. They have skin, and both of them are healthy. And when we talk about their differences, sa ibang box naman, as you can see it, the first difference is oranges have more acid. And the last one is apple has thinner skin. So as you can see, there is alike, the comparison, the difference, the contrast. Okay, so that is another example for preparing our kids in comprehension. Now, let us now proceed in the next one, the text patterns, which is the concept or what we call definition, the introduction of concepts. So in here, we have here it's like a web, it's like another graphic organizer. We talk about waves. Okay, so that is an example of concept. We try to deal with a single word, and we try to elaborate it. Okay, we try to elaborate it. We give definition. There is a concept being introduced in here. So that is an example of concept and definition. All right. Now this time, let's talk about description. Another one is description, which is the description of an event, process, or person with elaboration on key characteristics. So just like heron. What does a heron mean? Okay, it is like a bird, right? It's a bird. So give more description about heron. Okay, so you try to elaborate what heron is. What does the heron eat? Where do herons go? Where do they live? Like that. So that is an example of description. Okay, now going next, we have another text pattern, another skill, which is what we call the episode. This is very common. Okay, when we say episode, the who, what, when, where, how, and why of an event. So it's like it's the 5 W's, okay, and 1 H. So we try to know who, what, when, where, how, and why. Okay, so we have here an example of an episode as a text pattern. We have here the cause and effect. We have here persons down below, or anything that talks about the time, the place, and the description itself. So that is an example of episode. So those are examples of preparing for comprehension. And this is the very common one, which is the cause and effect. Okay? The cause and effect. So cause and effect, when we say cause, dahilan, the effect, resulta. Right? So cause and effect, an explanation of various causes and their corresponding effects, such as the addition of salt to water having an effect on the freezing and boiling points of water. So this is an example in science. Okay? So the cause and the effect. Dahilan, resulta. Okay? So bunga, ang bunga niya, yun ang epekto. Okay? Another one, we have the problem solving. So a problem or solution. So it's a description of a problem such as a conflict between two characters and a solution. So how the characters resolve the conflict, an argument for alternative solutions. So we have here example of problem, existing problem. We have teen pregnancies. Okay, so what are the possible resolution for that? We have the birth control, we have the abstinence. So that is an example of an organizational, or rather a graphic organizer that shows the problem and the possible solution of the existing problem. Okay, so that is for the preparation or preparing the kids for comprehension. Okay, now let us now proceed to the stages. This is very important. According to Keen and Zimmerman in 1997, there are strategies that should be taught explicitly. Okay, so here is an example of reading comprehension strategies. The first one, which is the activating comprehension or the pre-reading stage. Where in fact, in this stage, we are trying to activate the prior knowledge of the reader. Okay, activating prior knowledge. The next step is the constructing comprehension, and this is during the reading stage. The readers try to visualize. They do visualizing, making connections, questioning, and inferring. The last step is the extending comprehension or the post-reading stage. In here, the readers are going to determine the important ideas by summarizing or synthesizing the story. Now let's talk each of the stage. Let's have the activating prior knowledge. The very common activity for that is the KWL, or the know, want, learn chart. So what you already know, what you want to know, and what you learned. So that is under the activating prior knowledge. So how are we going to deal with that? Let's have an example. Let's talk about pie graphs. So what do you know? What do you already know about pie graphs? So we can say that pie graphs are record data. Graphs, record data. Pie graphs are circle, indeed, and I like pie. I like pie. Okay, or the shape is like a pie, like that. So that is what you know about the pie graphs. Now, what do you want to know about pie graphs? So you want to know, like, what kind of data can you record on pie graph? What data are we going to put, okay, on our pie graph? What they call pie, are they called pie graphs because they look like a pie? So that is another one. Okay, now a question that you want to be, a question that you want an answer. Okay, so those are the things that you want to know. The last column is what you learned. So you can't record all the types of data on a pie graph. We can't put it on a pie graph. Okay, so there are things that should be considered in using the pie graph, of course. Okay, and the last one, they are called pie graphs because they look like a pie, of course. Okay, so that is an example of what you learn. So again, KWL chart is an example of activating prior knowledge. Okay, as the first stage. Another one, under activating comprehension or the pre-reading stage, which is the word map. Talking about word map, most word map organizers engage students in developing a definition, synonyms, antonyms, and a picture for a given vocabulary word or concept itself. So for example, animals. Let's talk about animals. There are different kinds of animals. There are different kingdoms of animals, right? So what kind of animals can we see in the water? What animals can we see on land? Okay, so those are examples of word map. So we try to again to elaborate more using a graphic organizer still. Okay, so that is for activating comprehension or the pre-reading stage. So again, that is word map. Another one, let's talk about constructing comprehension, and this is for during reading stage. So this is the second stage now. Let's learn more about visualizing. So when we say visualizing, it is the use of pictures, the use of semantic web, or the structural overview of the text. So now, in here, we can also use here maps, charts, and the graphs. So that is how we visualize. Okay? So now, another one under constructing comprehension or during reading stage, the making connections. So, text to self connections. How would you relate it to yourself? After reading the text, after reading the story, for example, how would you relate it to yourself? Okay? Another one is text to world connections. So, in reading the text or in reading the story, how would you connect it outside to the world? Okay? To the current issues that we have right now. Okay? So, that is an example of making connections. So, text to self connections, text to world connections. That is making connections. Okay? Now, the next one is questioning. This is very common, especially for storytellers, for teachers inside the classroom, okay, for tutors like you listening right now. So when we talk about questioning, this is very common. Okay? So when we talk about questioning, it requires children to think about what they are reading. Okay? We try to ask, may naintindihan kaya ang bata na ito? Okay? That's why we ask question for confirmation and to test their comprehension. Okay, now, there are types of questioning. 4 types of questionings actually. So let's have the first one. Okay? This is very common and this is what we call the right there question. The right there questions are found right in the text that the children are reading. So that is right there question. So now, for example, who is Frog's friend? So the answer is Toad. So you can easily find the answer in the text or in the story. So that is an example of the right there question. Okay? So another type of question. Let's have the next one, which is think and search. Think and search are examples of questions based on the recall of facts that can be found directly in the text as well. Okay, so recall of facts. Think and search. Example, why was Frog sad? Then they will try to recall, why is it that Frog was sad? So, it can also be seen directly on the text. So the answer there is, his friend was leaving. Okay, so the answer again can be found directly in the text. Okay, so that is under think and share. Let's have the third one, the author and you. When we say author and you kind of questions, they require students to use with what they have learned from reading the text. This time, again, author and you require students to use what they have learned, out of reading the text. So, example, what do you think the frog felt when he found Toad? Okay, so what do you think? Look at the keywords there. What do you think? Or the phrase rather. What do you think? So in here, it is like asking what you have learned. What do you think about it? So, possible question. We have, I think that Frog felt happy because he had not seen Toad in a long time. I feel happy when I get to see my friend who lives far away. So that is a possible answer. So you can even make your own answer out of the story that you're reading. Okay? So, for example, that is for Pedro. That is what Pedro is trying to say. How about for Juan? What do you think the frog felt when he found Toad? So maybe Juan has another answer. Okay? So that is the author and you kind of question. Okay, the fourth and the last one type of question we have here, on your own. Okay? So when we say on your own, okay, it is a kind of question that answers or that are answered based on the student's prior knowledge and experiences. So, example, how would you feel if your best friend moved away? So it's like experiential. Prior knowledge. Maybe you have a best friend before and your friend moved away to another place. So what would you feel? You're trying to relate. You want to relate on your own. So the possible answer could be, I would feel very sad if my best friend moved away because I would miss her. So that is an example. Okay? Now, moving forward. Another example for constructing comprehension during reading is what we call inferring. Okay? Inferring is something derived by reasoning. Infer your conclusion. Gather clues from the text and think ahead to make judgment. That is inferring. Okay. Another one, when we talk about inferring, it is all about predicting. Okay? We predict what is to come. Or let's just say, again, reading between the lines. Okay? So that is inferring. Making predictions. Okay. Now, another example for inferring, use of prediction chart. Okay, we have here for activating prior knowledge, we have the KWL. For constructing comprehension or during reading stage, we have the use of prediction chart. So the title is all about planet Earth. The predictions based on the title. For example, we have here predictions based on skimming the pictures, illustrations, and etc. Predictions after reading pages 4 to 8. What can you say about it? Okay? What are your predictions about planet Earth? What are your judgments? Okay? So those are examples of constructing comprehension during the reading stage. Okay, now this time, the third stage, let's talk about extending comprehension and post-reading stage. Okay, this is the last stage. Now, in comprehension, let's talk about determining important ideas or summarizing. So we use of visual maps like story map or the story grammar. Using creative strategies like drawing, acting out, or writing a summary of what they read. So that is an example of determining important ideas or summarizing. Okay, synthesizing. Okay, so that is for extending comprehension or post-reading stage. Now this time, let us now proceed to another strategy on reading comprehension. We have the direct instruction. So, direct instruction, we have strategy, instruction, and the consideration. So what does it mean? Let's talk about direct instruction. So when we say direct instruction, it is a step-by-step strategy. Okay? A step-by-step strategy wherein we try to model the effective strategies. Okay, a step-by-step strategy and modeling effective strategies. In what way? So the first one, we have the strategy instruction. Strategy instruction is a student-centered approach. Okay, involves teaching a plan or variety of strategies. Okay, we try to ask question. Okay, it is as an example of student-centered approach. So that is another example for strategies on reading comprehension. And another one is the consideration. When we talk about consideration, we try to refrain from providing students with the right answer to a reading comprehension question. So that is why we try to ask questions more or deeply. Let us try to elaborate more until they derive to the correct answer, or until they come up with an idea or an answer. Okay, so reword an explanation and ask prompting questions. So that is an example of strategies, or those are examples of strategies on reading comprehension. Now, let's have more examples of strategies. We have the Venn diagram. As you can see, two circles, okay, they are connected. Okay, so this is an example for maybe the comparison and contrast. Okay, and the common of the two, we have Winnie the Pooh and the Padding Bear. So as you can see, their differences and their similarity. Okay, compare and contrast pairs. So that is an example of a Venn diagram. Okay, actually there are a lot of Venn diagram. Okay, and the last one is timeline. The timelines. For example, my life timeline. Okay, this timeline. The timeline word or term is not new to us because we have Facebook. We have Facebook timeline, as you can see. So in here, this is a timeline, an example of a timeline. First, we have the day I was born until he got a pet, first day of school, the Disney World vacation, okay, riding a bike, okay, and then today I am 11 years old and I'm going into the 6th grade. So that is an example from the very start until the present. Okay, so that is timeline. So we try to use that kind of example as well. Now this time, let us now proceed to the story time. I have here a story for you and I will read it, and I want you to answer some questions. Okay, so before I read it, I have a question for you. Are you ready? Okay, that would be nice. So the first question is, what would you choose? Homework or video games? Example, you're a student or you're a pupil in the 6th grade. What are you going to choose? Homework or video games? Let's find out, because the title of the story that we will have this afternoon is Homework or Video Games. Brad loves to video games. His favorites are Disney games. Brad got home from school one day and his mom asked him if he had homework. He did, but he thought saying no because he wanted to play his games. Now, what do you think will Brad answer to his mom? What do you think? Okay, then he changed his mind. He knew that if he lied, he would lose his games for a week. He did his homework first and still had time to play 2 games before dinner. He knows it best to be honest. So that is all about homework or video games. So did Brad do the right thing? Why do you say so? Okay, let us try to process what I just presented to you. Now, let's talk about the questions. The first question I raised was, what would you choose? Homework or video games? So, I applied the 3 stages in reading comprehension. So, the first question is an example of activating comprehension or the pre-reading stage. What would you choose? Homework or video games? The second question, it says here, what do you think will Brad answer to his mom? So, That can be seen at the middle part, or that question was raised at the middle part of the story. That is an example of constructing comprehension or during the reading stage. What do you think will Brad answer to his mother? Okay, that is inferential, inferring. Okay, constructing comprehension or the during reading stage. And the last question we have there, did Brad do the right thing? Why do you say so? So in that stage, we are in the last stage actually. So we use there the extending comprehension, or what we call the post reading stage. Okay, so in that story, I inserted the 3 stages in reading comprehension. I hope you can also do that one in the field with your tutors. Okay, you can use that kind of strategy in dealing with their comprehension. And I hope that you got something, okay, out of this discussion today or this afternoon, and you can use the stages, you can use the strategies and examples of strategies in the field, okay, especially those who are doing the reading or the read at home program. And I hope that you can be able to help the kids in developing their reading comprehension. Before I end my discussion this afternoon, and before we end the day 1 session, because tomorrow you still have another session, let me have this quote to you. The most important thing is to try and inspire people so that they can be great in whatever they do. And that is by the late Kobe Bryant. I hope all of you learned something, and I am very excited for your questions if you have. Thank you so much for listening, and God bless you all.